I hope everyone's having a wonderful morning. I know I am. I got a lot of things going on, so I'm gonna have to make this episode kind of quick. But we got a lot of things to talk about on this GameDay Express podcast. Being that it's week 13, Heisman conversation is a high. Everyone's criticizing the college football playoffs, thinking that their team deserves it and this team don't deserve it. And it's week 13, so there's a lot of ball to talk about. But to kind of kick us off, I want to talk about the Heisman conversation. With the Heisman, there's no true front runner, in my opinion. Yes, Fernando Mendoza has probably played the best out of all the quarterbacks with a 73 completion rating, 2,600 passing yards, 30 touchdowns to the air to 5 interceptions. He has a couple more touchdowns on the ground. I think puts him right at about 34 touchdowns on the year, almost 3,000 total yards with the rushing total included. But I mean, his performance at quarterback puts him probably top 4, top 5 in any other year's Heisman conversation. Julian Sayin has the best completion percentage by far out of any quarterback in the country with 80%, throwing 2,600 yards, 25 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. But he has like no mobility. He has no explosive plays, no Heisman level moments. He doesn't have any rushing totals to increase his numbers. He's just passing from the pocket. He's not screaming Heisman. And he's looking more like a game manager than like a true Heisman contender. And then Ty Simpson, yeah, he's had some bad games. Like, he's had his hot moments. He had his bad game against FSU, not so hot against Oklahoma. He's right there at 66%, 27 total yards, 22 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. I mean, he's probably played second best. Like, him and Julian are tit for tat for first or second and third. Because I think Fernando Mendoza is the best quarterback. So if you look at the top 3 quarterbacks, it goes Mendoza, then Julian, Ty, and you flip-flop Julian and Ty. And then a couple quarterbacks that are, hanging on the outlier that I think should still be in the conversation. Stockten, 22 total passing yards, or a little over 2,200 passing yards, 19 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. He has another 8 touchdowns on the ground. His grand total is somewhere around 26, 27 total yards, right there at 27 total touchdowns, which I think puts him third in the country in total touchdowns. So, I mean, he's balling out. By far, he's the second best quarterback in the SEC, right behind Ty Simpson. And, I mean, there's a case argument to put him in first, but there's also a case argument to put him in second. But he's undoubtedly a top 2 quarterback out of the SEC. So there's not a doubt that Gunnar Stockton's in the conversation. Now, there's a couple guys that are most definitely not in the conversation, like Marcel Reed has not played up to par, especially in the South Carolina game, to even be put in the Heisman conversation. I know a lot of folks are going to want to put him there, 2,600 yards, 22-8, but that 22-8 looks pretty bad when you look at everybody else's touchdown to interceptions, like 30-5, 25-4, 22-2, 19-3. Like, he's thrown the most interceptions right there at 2,600 yards, but his completion percentage, 61.5. In that South Carolina game, yes, he had a great comeback in the second half, led them to victory, threw 3 touchdowns, had a great performance. But when you're the reason why your team has to make a miraculous comeback in the second half, that's not a Heisman moment. I'm not going to look and say, oh, he had a Heisman moment second half. No, you have to at least perform fairly well in the first half to go on to have a Heisman moment in the second. But you're the reason why you have to perform at a Heisman level. That game, I'm not going to put that in your books as a Heisman game. I mean, some other quarterbacks that are floating right there under the radar, but nobody really has the numbers. Like Dante Moore, he's played good, probably the third best quarterback out of the Big Ten, but 2,100 yards, 21-5, 72% completion rating. That's his passing numbers. He's not really performing at a Heisman level. And then if you look at some other guys that aren't in the conversation but are definitely putting up numbers, Aaron Manson from Duke, 3,000 total yards, 25 touchdowns to 4. Drew Mestamaker, 3,000 yards, 23-4. They both sitting right there at 68, 69% completion rating. Joey Fanyo, I probably pronounced his last name completely wrong. He's sitting right there at 68% completion rating, 900 yards, 25 touchdowns to 1. I mean, UConn's quarterback has been playing like one of the best in the country, but nobody wants to talk about him because he's at UConn. Nobody's going to talk about an independent school like UConn or a group of 5 school like North Texas when you have 2 quarterbacks performing at a very high level against their competition. So, and then Darren Manson. Nobody's going to talk about him being that he's in the ACC. And Darren's somebody coming into next year that, without a doubt, is going to be top 2, top 3 in Heisman conversation. And then when you go and look over to the defensive side of the ball, because everyone wants to talk about, Jacob Rodriguez going into the Heisman conversation. Yes, he's had 7 forced fumbles, 4 interceptions, which a lot of people would like to count that as 11 turnovers, but he only has 2 fumble recoveries. When it comes to those 7 forced fumbles, if those forced fumbles were not recovered by their said team, then I don't count them as a stat, because forced fumbles are kind of like PDUs in a way that, okay, you broke up the ball. Okay, you hit the ball out. But what did it do? Nothing. Like most of the time when you force a fumble and the opposing team just jumps on it, they're not gaining or adding or losing any yards. In some cases, you punch the ball out and the opposing team jumps on it, they gain yardage. So to me, he's had a good year, but his 97 tackles is not even top 15 in the country in his position group. Like if you look at the top 15 tacklers, most of them, outside of maybe 2, are D linemen and the D lineman and D back. Everybody else is linebackers. So he's not even cracking top 10 in total tackles out of his own position group. 129, 128, 122, 119, 118 are just the top 5 numbers. And then when you look at somebody from another guy from UConn, Parham, 108 total tackles. 52-56 is his ratio between solo and assist. 10.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 interceptions. Like I said, those forced fumbles got to be recovered. So he's had 1 interception, okay? What Jacob has is a fumble return for a touchdown. He has that slight edge, but he's not clearing waters in the tackle category or in the sack category. So he's not even performing better than the rest of his peers in his own position group. That goes back to, if you're going to be a Heisman contender, you have to at least be one of the top 5, top 3 guys out of your own position group. And we're talking about forced fumbles. I mean, Red Murdoch from Buffalo, he has 6 forced fumbles on the year. So we're going to look at that and consider forced fumbles, because like I said, unless they're recovered, they shouldn't mean anything. And that goes for anybody with forced fumbles. And I know I've called them out, but I'm just pointing out, like, if we're going to point out forced fumbles, like, let's point them out. But I don't think they should be counted. To me, Jacob only has 6 turnovers because of the 2 he has recovered and the 4 interceptions with the 1 defensive touchdown. Texas Tech gave him an offensive touchdown, just to be clear on that. So to me, he's not top 15. He's not even top 10 in sack numbers by his group. He's not top 10 in tackle numbers by his group. The only thing that he's top 5 in will be the interception numbers in his group, and probably tied with half of the guys in his group for fumble recoveries. So he's not playing at a different level than everybody else. You look at the running backs, and once again, there's no running back that screams Heisman contender. Like, Keon Lacey has 19 touchdowns, which is the most by any running back in the country. But this man is averaging 4.9 yards a carry, 1,100 yards. Okay, Caleb Hawkins out of a group of 5 has 933 rushing yards, 6.3 yards a carry to 16 touchdowns, which is 2nd in the country. Jeremiah Love rushing numbers alone is just top 5 with 14 touchdowns, 1,100 yards, 6.4 yards a carry, which is really great. I'm not going to take that away from him. 94-yard run. Like, what separates Jeremiah Love? He is top 5 in both rushing and touchdowns at his group, averaging 6.4 yards a carry. What helps him out is his explosive plays. Like, he has Heisman level moments when it matters. I would like for Jeremiah Love to be first in his position group, because that would just help his case a little bit better. But then when you look at his receiving numbers, he has about 74 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he's just right there at, I would say, about 1,400 total yards, 16 total touchdowns, which is, once again, would still put him about 2nd, 3rd, put him about 3rd, 4th place still among running backs. So would you consider Jeremiah Love the Heisman contender out of the running back group when you have Cam Cook, 1,300 yards, 13 touchdowns, Juan Lacey, 1,100 yards, 19 touchdowns, Amar Hardy, 1,800 yards, 15 touchdowns. So I don't know. I don't think there's really like a clear-cut number one guy out of the Heisman race. Even when you go look at the receiving position, you have two receivers with about 1,150 yards, 10 touchdowns, 13 touchdowns. Danny Scarbo out of San Jose State, 1,100 yards, 16 average on the catch, 10 touchdowns. Sky Bell, 93 receptions, 1,150 yards, 12 yards an average, 13 touchdowns. Those are your top two, and they're out of the G5. Then Micaiah Lemon, 71, 1,000, 15.4 average, 8 touchdowns. So, like, there's nobody that's like, oh, they're breaking and they're top of their top and they're Heisman level guys. Like, there's nobody screaming Heisman level. So that's what I think makes the Heisman conversation so hard to choose. And for me, if I had to choose any particular 5 guys that are in my clear-cut number one, to me, because it's just such an underperforming year. Like, there's nobody that's really out of any group that's like clear front runner. But if I had to lay out a 5, it would go Fernando Mendoza, Julian Sayin, no, Gunnar Stockton, Jeremiah Love, Julian Sayin. Like, I want to go Rodriguez so bad just to have a different guy in there. But like I said, he's not even in conversation with a top 10 in a lot of the important stats out of a linebacker. And yes, when you watch film, his play style is phenomenal. Like, I love his play, but he just doesn't have the numbers. I love his play. I think he plays great. He's one of the best linebackers in the country without a doubt, but he just doesn't have the numbers. The turnovers, he has them. He just doesn't have the sacks. He doesn't have the tackles. So to me, Jeremiah Love would be a nice one. I would have to go Jeremiah Love just based off of just moments. He's had the best moments out of all the running backs, but I think if I would have had to include a different running back, it would have to be either Amon Hardy or Lacey out of Ole Miss. Those would have to be my next guys up. All right, let's switch gears because I ran on that Heisman talk a little too long. Let's go ahead and talk about the college football playoffs, because to me, there's a lot of issues with the playoff system. And it's not just like because like conference champs get in auto bid or you're having the 7 at-large teams. I think it's the way they're doing it, because like a lot of people want to do away with conference champs as a whole. Like, just do away with conference champs. Top 12 is top 12. Let them go play. And the thing that I've pointed out to multiple people on the internet is the fact that you look at any other college program, like any college sports playoff system, it includes the conference champs. Every conference champ is in the playoffs. Doesn't matter what you go look at, soccer, FCS, basketball, whatever you go look at, they make the playoffs. Every one of them makes the playoffs. Now, I think that's a good formula to take to build the college football playoffs. And then another thing a lot of people are pointing out is the group of 5 shouldn't get an auto bid just for winning their conference. Like, you shouldn't just take a group of 5 team, they're the highest ranked, and put them in because they're going to get dog walked. Well, the thing of it is, a lot of soccer teams, a lot of basketball teams, baseball teams, even other football teams in the FCS, even though they do make the playoffs, they do get dog walked. I mean, that's just a part of the game. A lot of teams aren't going to be up to par to most of the other teams in the playoffs. I mean, even some P4 teams we've seen last year get dog walked. And they're P4, so we can't use that argument of, well, they're going to get embarrassed, so we shouldn't include them. Tennessee got embarrassed. I'm pretty sure, what did Indiana get embarrassed too? SMU got embarrassed. Oregon got embarrassed. So what are we talking about? Just because you get embarrassed, you shouldn't be considered for the playoffs. You know how many teams get embarrassed throughout the year? Should we just like de-size them down? I don't understand that argument. Oh, they get embarrassed, they shouldn't be included. Sometimes you're just not cut out for it, and that's perfectly okay. But you still deserve to make the playoffs if you won your conference. And if the G5 team that makes the playoff team is undefeated and the highest rated G5 team, then they're in the playoffs. They're going to get treated like anybody else. Like, I promise you, the G5 team that makes the playoff is going to lose just as bad as one or two of the other Power 4 teams that's in the playoffs right now. I'm not going to name who, but I promise you, there's going to be 1 or 2 P4 teams that's going to get embarrassed just as bad as the group of 5 team does. That's just going to be a proven fact. So what I would justify, these are my 2 layouts, because everyone wants to see the G5 out of the playoffs. Everybody wants to see the right teams in the playoffs. This is what I say. These are my 2 things that I got. One, if you're going to do a G5 playoff system, just screw putting them in the CFP. You have to create a third division. FCS is 1AA. FBS is 1A. Then that's what a lot of people are getting confused. Like the college football playoffs was made for Division 1A, not Division 1A and a half, Division 1A. And the CFP wants to exclude the G5 for whatever reason from being in the playoffs. That's a CFP problem. So what I would do is create 3 divisions. You have Division 1 AAA, A, and single A, being FCS getting bumped down to AAA. A group of 5 will be put in at AA, and then FBS, or your remaining Power 4 teams, or Power 5 if they include the Pac-12, will then be put in at single A. We're all still Division 1 ball, but you just have to create a 1 AAA in order to take the group of 5 out of the rest of the FBS, and then create them their own playoff system. Give them a 12-team playoff system. They have 5 conferences. Give them 5 conference champions, 7 runner-ups. Give them a 12-team playoff system, and let them run from there. And really and truly, you probably could take out some of those FCS programs that don't necessarily want to make the jump to FBS yet. So you give them that middle territory. You might hurt the FCS a little bit by creating a third division in terms of recruiting, financial funds, and other resources, but we're going to have that's a whole nother conversation. And then 2, going back to the FBS, you can probably keep the 12 team now that you only have 5 conferences. You put the 5 conference champs in. That's if you include the Pac-12, 5 conference champs make it 7 at-larges. And I think that'd be a fairly fair thing to do. And then Notre Dame has to join the conference. There's no more of this Notre Dame bias of them just being out of a conference. They have to join. That's option 1. Option 2, for me, expand it to a 16 or 24-team playoff. All 10 conference champs make the playoff system. If you do 16, that means you have 6 at-larges. If you do 24, that means you have 14 at-larges. I like the 16 with only 6 at-larges. You have 10 win, you have 10 in, 6 at-large. I think 16 would be a perfect number. Run it that way. Once again, Notre Dame joins a conference. No more of this independent. I think independent is throwing a wrench in everything. But by doing that, every conference team makes the playoffs, even if you're a group of 5. All 10 conference champs are in the playoffs. You have 6 at-large. The 6 next highest teams will make the playoffs. And I think when it comes to the rankings themselves have to be a little bit more diverse. I don't think you should just continuously rank P4, 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 P4. At some point, we're going to have to give credit to the group of 5. And by doing so, I think there's going to have to be a new scheduling structure. I think every conference has to go down to 15, I will say 14 teams. Every conference should be a 14-team conference. I think 16 is the limit, because I say 14, let everyone play half their conference, 7 or 8 games. Then you have 4 open slots. 3 of those open slots will have to go against the other Power 4 conferences, and then you'll have 1 cupcake schedule, 1 cupcake week. Everybody will get a cupcake week. Now, I would advocate for extending the regular season to 13 weeks, that you already have a week 0 that can go ahead and be an official week 1. Everybody will get to play in that week, and if you want to do a week 0, just bump it up a week. And that's just something that you would have to do. Then you get 13 games. You get 5 game slots that could be given out to the Power 4 conferences. And then you have 2 open slots to play 2 group of 5 teams, or a group of 5 in the FCS team. That way, when you look at scheduling, like your group of 5 has played multiple Power 4 teams because they play their 7, 8 conference games. Then they play their 4, because G5 will end up having more P4 team scheduled, especially like your Boise States and your South Floridas and your Memphis, and probably, let's say, your JMUs that want to really be considered. They're going to go ahead and schedule a lot more P4 teams to go ahead and get that boost up in strength of schedule. And then you can rank accordingly. So I think those are the terms that will have to come together. One, you want to go ahead and I'll say the scheduling structure can go for both. Even if you separate, go ahead and just make that scheduling a requirement for college football. A 16-team conference limit, 8-game conference schedule, 4 open weeks, 3 mandatory games against the other Power 4 conferences, and then you have one open week to schedule whoever you want. All right, once again, I rambled a lot, and I'm so sorry. I'm going to get better at not rambling, but let's go ahead and get into the game day picks, the biggest segment of this podcast. Starting us off with our third 3:30 game. We got USC versus Oregon. And for me, USC impressed me. Coming out of halftime last week, down to Iowa, defense stood tall in the second half, and their offense generated points. That's something Oregon struggled with against Iowa, was just kind of letting that offensive momentum get going. So I think if USC can bring that same defensive focus into this Oregon game, that gives them an opportunity to win. I think USC's receiving core is slightly better than Oregon's, mainly because Oregon has dealt with injuries in the receiving core. But I do like their freshman running backs. I think their trio, their tandem of running backs Oregon has is very dominant. And for a team that USC has struggled against runs, like Jeremiah Love and Price out of Notre Dame was probably the biggest example of USC struggling against a run. I think Emmett Johnson, when they played Nebraska, had a pretty good game against them. Pretty sure Michigan has also had a pretty good game on the ground against USC. So for me, what I would like to see out of USC, they're going to have to stand tall once again against the run, because you're going to face another tandem of running backs that, when it comes to Oregon, either guy could really take the reins and run away with it. So they're going to have to really stand tall against the run, kind of like they did against Iowa. I think their offense is going to have to stand tall. I think their offense showed to me they can stand tall in the right moments. I think Oregon, for me, is kind of going in opposite direction, and I just love where USC is going right now. So for me, I'm going to ride USC over Oregon. And I haven't done one of these in a while, just because there hasn't really been no, in my eyes, crazy upsets. But let's go TCU Houston. I think Houston being ranked again, I don't respect it. I'm going to be honest with it. I don't think Houston should be ranked. And with that being the case, I think TCU is going to get the upset this week. I think TCU has the offensive firepower. McAllister, their receiver, is probably the best receiver in the Big 12 this year, just because he's had less injuries. I think Big 12 has dealt with a lot of injuries. One of the most plagued conferences when it comes to injuries I've seen. Every team in the Big 12 has dealt with injuries, but not talking about that right now. We're talking about the performance of Eric McAllister. 52 receptions, 941, 8 touchdowns, averaging 18 yards a catch. I mean, this man is a big threat monster at 6'3". And I think with Josh Hoover, they have the offensive firepower to really get over Houston. And what that West Virginia game kind of showcased to me is Houston's very vulnerable in making mistakes. So if they can make Connor Wegman throw interceptions and they can cause fumbles, I think TCU very well has a case to win this game. I like their passing game. I think their running game could improve a little bit, but they've also dealt with injuries out of the running backs. But I think with TCU's passing game, and if that defense can bring pressure on Connor Wegman, I think Houston is very fraudulent. I think they're very shaky to lose. So give me TCU over Houston. And then next up, game of the week. I think this is the game everyone's going to be watching at 12 o'clock. I wish it was a 7:30 game. But you got Missouri going to Norman to face Oklahoma. I think this game is going to be a true test of Oklahoma's run game, because you're arguably facing the best running back in the country with Amon Hardy. I think what Missouri has been able to do in the run game, I think a lot of their big runs have come out of the outside zone plays. And to me, Oklahoma's going to have to really tighten up the edges with their corners. And I think they have pretty decent corners to tighten up, and their safeties to drop down in the box, tighten up the edges a little bit. I don't think their receivers are going to really pose too much of a problem, being that, one, I don't really know what they're getting out of their quarterback. They're saying Prbula is going to be back and healthy, but then again, they could get the true freshman back at quarterback. And being that that's the case, I don't really expect their receiving core to pose much of a problem. Now, defensively, that's just kind of going to be Missouri's strength. I think they've had a pretty decent defense all year long. They've been able to get after the quarterback. They've been able to disrupt the quarterback all season. They did it against Simpson. They weren't able to do it as well against Marcel Reed, but still they were able to pressure him a little bit. And I think that's what's going to be the key for Missouri to win this game against Oklahoma. If they can get to the quarterback, and, Young and Wilson can disrupt Mater in the pocket. Because Mater hasn't ran the ball as much since coming back in his injuries, but I also think his passing game has improved a little bit. I think Mateer hasn't really ran the ball as much. He's been more in the pocket, but I think his passing game has improved a little bit. Number 5 for Oklahoma has been a beast. He's a big playmaker that Missouri is going to have to stop. He's a big playmaker in the pass game. He's a big playmaker in special teams. But once again, it's stopping the run because Oklahoma, to me, hasn't really done enough to really show that they can open up lanes for their running backs. And that's one of the downfalls for this team, is the lack of explosiveness in the running game from their running backs. And if Missouri can bring the pressure to the quarterback, shut down the run like a lot of teams have been able to do on OU out of their running backs, then Missouri has a fighting chance. But I like Oklahoma's defense. With the uncertainty that Missouri has back there at quarterback with injuries and the healthiness of their quarterback, I think with what they bring in out of their defensive line, their linebackers, they hone to the ball. They have a pretty decent, like I said, pretty decent group of DBs. I think Oklahoma, because they disguise better than anybody I've seen. I think Brent Venable has done amazing work with this defense. Very good disguise to confuse the quarterbacks. And if you have a true freshman back there having to read the disguise, then I don't think that's going to be a good day. So if Purpula is there, I think he can read the coverages a little better. But Oklahoma does a good job of disguising their defenses. So for me, I'm going to ride Oklahoma over Missouri. Now, with all that said, my 3 games, I got USC over Oregon. I got the upset of the week with TCU taking down Houston on the road. And then I got Oklahoma holding down the fort against Missouri. Like always, check out the other socials. I always up here with another podcast. And I got a project in works, being that the season's almost over. I got a project coming up for the offseason. So stay in tune. Always make sure you listen, follow, subscribe on my socials, and I'll see y'all in the next podcast.